Friday night for us is when it starts, right? It's like the foreplay, if you will.
Success is not about never failing, it's about how fast you get back up. Selfless, and here's selfish. And right in the middle, it's called honoring yourself. Hello, everyone. It is my immense pleasure to introduce a powerful lady that I consider a friend, a mentor, an inspiration. Lisa Bilyeu is co-founder of Quest, and we all know about Quest, the $10 million, maybe more, nutrition bars that I still eat, actually. And she co-founded Impact Theory with her husband, Tom, and now she has her own branch of that called Women of Impact. And what I love about Lisa is she's a powerful woman in her own right, but she's also part of a power couple. I used to have an advice column, and women are fascinated by power couples and how the balance goes back and forwards. And there aren't that many actually power couples. There's often a couple where, well, he's more powerful or she's more powerful, and the other person is kind of in the wings. But Lisa and Tom are, I consider, an equal power couple. So I've got so many questions to ask you, and I really want to jump in. So I was in Mexico in 2016, and I met Lisa. And of course, although she's from a Greek background, she was from the UK like me. So we began to chat, and she told me her love story, and it was very impressive. And I always remembered it. And then I met her again and went, oh, hey, we met in Mexico, and I've been on her show, and I'm elated that she is on mine. So welcome, Lisa.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. I've got so many questions to ask you. So I think I should dive right in and ask you the first question, because I know that you became an entrepreneur in a very unusual way. And I want to ask you, first of all, to tell me that unusual story about becoming and actually staying an entrepreneur. Tell me the unusualness about
the unusual. Thank you. Yeah, you mentioned earlier that I'm Greek. So growing up in a very traditional Greek family, it was just assumed that I was going to get married, have kids. I literally didn't even question it. Like, I'd love to blame everybody else, but I just thought that was how it was going to be. And I had, very kind of easily slipped into that role with my husband, Tom. We wanted to make movies. It was a big dream of ours. So he was like, well, let me go and make enough money and I'll come back and we'll make movies together. I was like, okay, that sounds like a great plan. The naivety of the beginner, right? Like, yes, entrepreneurship is way more difficult than we thought it was. But this was, 2000, I want to say like 2002. So this was a while ago before entrepreneurship became a thing. And so I was like, okay, great. I'll stay at home. I'll support you. You go out and make the money and then you come back and we'll make films together. And the reason how we got even to that conclusion was we just look at our goal and say, who has done that before? So our goal was to try and make enough money. Okay, right now, who is successful in, tech industry or wherever? Who is doing something incredible? And so we looked at Steve Jobs. And so you look at Steve Jobs and he used to wear the same shirt every day, the same color. Because if you read about his story, we only have a certain amount of decisions we can make with utter clarity in a day. And so what he did and how he lived his life was removing all elements of decision making that didn't impact his business. So Tom and I sat down and we said, great, I'll handle all the decisions at home. I'll cook dinner. I'll put your clothes out for you. Literally, he would wake up and his gym clothes would be next to his bed. He would put his gym clothes on. He would come back home. I would hand him his food. I would hand him his clothes for work and he would go to work. So initially it was like, this is a teamwork. Okay, I can be a part of it. I'm really carrying my weight over here. And what ended up happening was for 8 years, he was chasing money. And I slowly over time slipped into being a housewife. And I always say there's nothing wrong with being a housewife at all, if that's what you really want from life and you choose it. But what ended up happening was I was like in purgatory, where I call it like mundane purgatory. My life was just mundane enough, but not bad enough or not great enough for me to make a change. And so looking back, I had spent 8 years just in this place of I wasn't satisfied, I wasn't happy, I didn't have a purpose, but it wasn't bad enough that I tried to figure my way out. And wasn't until my husband came home with a crazy idea to build a protein bar company that I had jumped in, and I was like, well, as a supporting wife, of course I'll help you. And so I stumbled into entrepreneurship purely because I was like, as the supportive wife, I'm going to help my husband. So if he needs me to ship protein bars, I'm going to help him ship protein bars. If he needs me to hand make, which is what we were doing at first, we were hand making protein bars with knives and rolling pins for 8 hours at a time. And so again, I was like, of course I'll help my husband. Now, what I didn't predict is that we would grow at 57,000%. What I didn't predict is that we had our house on the line. And so that fear of losing the house forced me to step into total being uncomfortable, not understanding business, not knowing business. But the fear of losing my house forced me into developing the mindset that then allowed me to get into business and stay here.
How long did it take you? I'm fascinated. I think a lot of people underestimate how long it takes to go from an idea to success, and they leave early. How long did it take you to grow that business, the rolling pins and the knives at home, until it became a $1 billion business that you sold? How long?
Yeah, so we had business partners, and so we were kind of dabbling along. It's like, well, no one was really happy in the business. One of my husband's business partner's wives loved nutrition, so she understood like the core of what nutrition is, how to build muscle, things like that. And so it was like, you know, maybe 6 months of taste testing, and then you're like, oh, this tastes great, amazing, let's package it and sell it. Yeah, it's never that easy, right? It's, well, hang on a minute, what's the FDA rules on packaging? You have to figure that out. You have to get the right, you have to follow, you know, guidelines. You also need your nutrition to be very exact. So you have to send it to, you know, a lab. You have to make sure it's shelf stable. So it's the second you add water to product or water to any food, it becomes activated the mold. So it's like, we love the taste, but what happens in 3 months? You know, you have to do a shelf test to make sure that it can sustain a year because you've given an expiration of it. So there's so much that goes into food. But we finally, it was 2010 that we registered our company. And from 2010 to 2015, we went from 0 to $1 billion company. We were just growing so fast, like I said, at 57,000%.
That was year growth, is that right?
That was 5
years. Because people always think you're an overnight success. They don't really realize that night was 5 years long. So in the 5 years, did you ever get close to quitting, or did you always have a vision to keep going?
So me personally, I think because initially the pressure wasn't like I'm an official partner in this. I literally went in with the wife mentality is just going to help my husband until they're big enough, and then I can step back again, and then we're going to, they'll make money and I'll be here and wait for my husband. But because when I started, it was growing so quickly, and we had our house on the line. If the company failed, we lost the house. That was very real to me. So as soon as we started growing, and it was like, well, Lisa, hang on, shipping because you've been shipping the bars from your living room floor. You need to go start a warehouse. I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing in a warehouse. I have been a boss to my 2 puppies for 8 years. And now you want me to go to a warehouse and figure it out. But my house is on the line. So I have no space to bitch and moan. I have no space to say, I don't know. I have no space to express even the fear, to let it stop me, because losing a house is very real. So I was like, okay, what do I have to learn? What do I have to do? Okay, I have to ship a pallet. What the hell is a pallet? I have to, I don't even know where to start. So I was just like, all right, well, if I have to figure out a pallet, let's Google what's a pallet. We use UPS to do small packages. All right, well, let me just call freaking UPS and say, hey guys, I need to ship something that's 1,000 pounds. How on earth do I do it? So it becomes that, right? Where it's like, you don't just stop at a brick wall. You have to freaking grab the sledgehammer and knock it down, because stopping at that brick wall to me wasn't an option. And so it forced me to learn skills as I was growing. So my husband and his business partners, I don't think they would have let things derail them. But for me, because I felt like I was so in over my head for years. I had joined my husband and his business partners who had been in another business together for years. So they understood business. So I talk a lot about like sitting at the table, right? When I would walk into these meetings where it's my husband and his business partners and they're talking so high level, and here I am just freaking struggling to figure out how to ship a product. I never thought I was worthy to join those meetings. I never thought that I was experienced enough and I could bring enough value to join those meetings, until over time I started to say, hang on a minute, I've learned stuff they actually don't know. So just sit at the table, like hold your breath and just, all right, Lisa, next time you walk in the room, I'm just going to walk in, I'm going to freaking sit at the table and I'm going to listen. And so I literally would count down, okay, I'm going to walk into the room. All right, sit at that chair, keep your eye on that chair, sit at the chair. So for me, it was such a big freaking evolution because I kept having to face my inadequacies every single day. So was quitting an option? When I actually said earlier it wasn't an option, of course it's an option. It's always an option. But the decision you have to make is it an option you're willing to settle for? And I wasn't willing to settle to lose my house.
Yeah, I love that because, I train people in RTT, my own brand of therapy. When I first started to train, I'd look at someone and go, oh my God, this person in my course is going to be so good. They've got the knack, they're really good at it. And then I'd say to them, hey, what's happening? They go, oh, I just thought I'd do another course. I just thought I'd study a bit more marketing. And I'm like, why? Well, I just want to be really perfect. And others who were not quite as talented to go off and grow an amazing business. And they go, well, I put the whole course on my credit card. I have to make the money back. I'm hitting the ground running because I've invested this money in your training and now I need to make it back. I've got kids, I have to support. And it was always interesting that ones like you had to make it work, got on with it. And the others were like, I'm waiting. It's like, well, have you ever met a plumber who's waiting? Or a waitress who's waiting to be perfect at it? And so many people wait to be perfect. I've written a book. I'm just going to add a bit more and a bit more and a bit more. And I think if you are starting a business, never wait to be perfect. As you say, you learn as you go along. It's a bit like saying, I'm going to wait till I'm perfect at parenting to have a baby. Well, that never happens. Sometimes you just have to get on with it. And I think it's great advice because so many people think, I can't start a business because I don't have experience. Well, you only get the experience when you start it. I can't build a company. You have to learn as you go along, rather like a relationship. It's the same thing. If you wait to have a perfect relationship, you'll never have one. But you learn as you go along. Yeah. So a question I have for you that I know my audience will want to know is, we have this belief, which is a complete lie. Nobody can have it all. You can't have it all. Something's got to give. If you have a great career, can't have a great relationship. Got a great relationship, can't have a career. And even if you have both, you can't go to the gym and your stress levels suffer. But you have a great relationship, a great business, a great body. You're happy. And you're very good at sharing what you have. So I know you have it all, but I'd love for you to tell everyone how you have it all and how you manage having it all. And what do you believe? People say something's got to give.
Yeah, God, well, first of all, thank you. I don't agree though. That's the truth. I don't feel like I have it all. And I don't strive to have it all. I think maybe that acceptance has helped me navigate levels of importance. And so what I do is I literally have a priority list. And anytime something clashes, I just decide what's more important. So like as a high level, what is the most important thing to me? My marriage. I would burn my business to the ground if it ever came in collision to my marriage. Now, on a daily basis, though, you would look at my calendar and say, but Lisa, you never see your husband. How can you say your marriage is priority? Because I don't need to see my husband every day to have a strong relationship. But I do have certain flags in place that are mandatory. I need to spend quality time with him. So when I spend quality time with him, I don't need that every day, but when I do, both our phones are off and we're entirely engaged with each other. So if they ever came into absolute conflict, I wouldn't have trouble saying, yeah, forget the business, because I'm so clear and on what is important to me and in order priority. So my husband comes first. We've both made that decision together. My business comes second, and then my family comes third. Now, it doesn't mean that I don't love my family. I freaking would die for my family. And I think that that's where a lot of people feel like in putting things in order, it becomes really important to see what is important to you, right? Like if there were, my family live in England, if there was a clash between my business is about to go down and my sister calls me and says, hey, I really need you, I would say, I'm sorry, my business is about to fail. I'm going to have to get back to you. Now, what I do say though, is I have very clear language with my family so that if it ever came to it and she's really on, like if my sister was really struggling, she would say the word, she would say this word and I would drop everything. I would drop my husband, I would drop my business. So it's never binary, but I do have, like I said, kind of clear rules that if my sister said she needed me and my business is about to go under, I'm going to pay attention to my business. Unless my sister says a special word, if she says that special word, I'll drop everything. So it's really a juggling game, I think, of what is important, what do I want in my life, and then which ones do I make sure that I always catch. See, that was a new analogy that just came to me. That's actually quite good. So I kind of...
I'm sorry, you just said you don't have it all. And I really think I do have it all. I think I have it all the time. But of course, juggling goes on. But I'm intrigued now by if you don't have it all, what is it you don't have?
So I don't have children.
Mm-hmm. But was that a choice?
Yes, 100%. But here's why I made that choice.
Okay.
There's a part of me that desperately wants children, to have a little Tom, to have a child that I can help influence, to help, people talk about legacy. If I've never make another video of my life and I never touch another person's, if I never impact anybody, it's nice to know that I've impacted my kid. So there are many reasons that I can convince myself that I desperately want children. But now I look at my life and what I really love doing. What am I really passionate about? I'm really passionate about my business. I'm really passionate about creating global impact. And so when I say, if I have to choose, would I rather global impact or impact one person? I would rather global impact. So then I look, okay, there are many women out there that have both, that work, have an incredible business, and have a family. And so I go, okay, well, what would that look like for me? And the one thing that I do a lot is, what does an average Wednesday look like? Because we can get so confused and so caught up in emotion about having kids and a legacy and what if I die? Who's going to, follow on my legacy and my name and my money and things like that. I can get really emotionally connected to that. But then I go, just look at an average Wednesday. Okay, if I love what I do, the baby cries at 3 a.m. Who's getting up? Tom has already made it very clear that's not something he wants to do. So now I'm like, okay, I get up. All right, well, then follow that thought through, Lisa. If you want to be able to get up at 7 a.m. and like you said, the gym is very important to me. The gym, lifting weights, is mental strength to me. So I go, okay, Lisa, do you want to give up the gym? Nope. Okay, come 9 o'clock. Let's say your kid's slightly older. You have to drive them to school. Do you want to be the one to drive them to school? No, I want to be working. So I literally just flushed out what an average Wednesday would look like. And I said, okay, well, people have nannies. I have no freaking judgment on nannies at all. But I'm like, is that what is right for me? And the truth is, no. If I want children, no judgment on anyone else, by the way. But if I want children, I want to bring them up. And so I started to assess all the things that I wanted with the realities, with the things that I know. And I had the discussion with my husband, and we both just came to the conclusion that children isn't right for us. But that doesn't mean that there isn't another universe that I would love to have kids. I just made that choice.
So what advice would you give to other women? Because you see, I was a single parent. I didn't even have a husband, but I was very lucky. I managed to be a single parent and grow a business all on my own. And it was a bit of a juggling act, but in some ways it was actually easier because I didn't have to answer. I didn't have to come home and cook anyone's dinner or do their laundry. It was just me and her. But it was because of her that I had this desire, because I remember at one stage I had a business and I was very lucky. I had enough money to put my kid through private school. I didn't have quite enough money to also take her on these amazing holidays that all these private school kids go on. I'm thinking, ooh, holiday school fees. I want both. And so I had to think of, gosh, how could I find a second career that would give me both? And that's when I became a writer. And now I think I'm so lucky. If I had a husband going, hey, here's a check for the school fees, I never would have been stretched that much to have two businesses, be a therapist, write books, and then finally open a school. So for me, it was actually the disadvantage was an advantage. The being stretched in all directions was actually, I wouldn't change any of it. But of course, that's the great thing about being a woman entrepreneur. We all have a different story, and someone somewhere is going to be motivated by your story and mine. But what advice would you give to female entrepreneurs who think, oh, it's too difficult, the price you pay is too hard, particularly people who believe that in a business, I hear this all the time, men don't like women who are successful. Men are intimidated by women who make their own money. And I know you grew up in that Greek household where it's kind of insidiously there that, you know, your job is to kind of support the guy. And if you're a super successful woman, they feel inadequate in your wake and then they leave you. What would you say to women who say, I'm scared of being a powerful woman because a powerful man won't like a powerful woman? What would you say to them?
Oh, that's such a myth. So
I know.
Yeah, I think so. There's multiple things there. Really, it comes down to, well, so actually, let me address one thing. So for you, with your kid, you were able to write a book and have a practice. I think that I would absolutely, like, if all of a sudden I clicked my fingers and I had a child, I'd figure it out. So it's, you know, I would use that to my advantage to go, oh, hang on a minute, actually stretching myself thin proves results. Okay, great. Like, I am so goal oriented that I would adjust my behavior and go, okay, I'm a mom, amazing. I also have this other goal. How do I juggle both? Okay, on Saturdays is just for my kid. Like, I would figure it out. I would never go, okay, so I'm not an entrepreneur anymore. I would just take the circumstances and then readjust how I show up. But the other part of the question is, for me and my husband, and again, I can only talk for our relationship. When I thought I was going to be a stay-at-home wife and I started to transition, I had to have that hard talk with him, because all of a sudden I was the person saying, I'm going to have 4 children. And now I'm saying to my husband, I don't want kids at all. I went 8 years, Marisa. I was putting his food out and putting his clothes out. And I literally had to turn around and say, you're on your own. Now, how did I handle that? I was very respectful. I approached it as a partnership. So I sat him down and I said, babe, I'm really unhappy. That's first thing. Address how you're feeling. I'm really unhappy. I love you so much, but I don't want to put your clothes out for you anymore. I don't want to make you food anymore. And I hope you understand that it's not a reflection of how I feel about you. It's just where I am right now. It's not making me feel good. But babe, you know what's actually really making me feel good? This business. Oh my God, it never even dawned on me that there were all these skills that I can learn. And every time I'm learning, I'm feeling more powerful and I'm feeling better about myself. And so I'm bringing him in to the process that I'm going through. And then at the end, I just said, and I don't know if I want children anymore, because there's this thing over here that is lighting me up so much. And I want to step into my own. I do not want to be, you know, the foundation of the great man, you know, like a lot of people say, it's like, you're the neck and the man is the head. And it's like, while I love you, I don't want to be that anymore. And he just looked at me and he said, what kind of husband would I be to not want what is absolutely best for my wife? And so he said, whatever process you need to go through, whatever is the thing that you want to be, I will be here to support you. But just like I'm here to support you, you have to understand where I am coming from. And so he said, of course I want my wife to cook me food and put clothes out for me. So give me some space to mourn and have a process so that it's, you know, we joke now, but it was like wean him off. And so I was like, absolutely, babe, no problem. So we created a schedule where every day I was doing one thing less for him, so that over a period of 2 or 3 weeks, he then became self-sufficient and I started stepping into my own. So that was a massive step 1. Step 2 is, if he's insecure about my strength, that's on him. And I really mean that. And what I would do is I would sit there and say, hey, babe, I love my husband being dominant, just to put it out there. Like, I love him being alpha male, but I also am a freaking strong woman. So it doesn't mean just because I love him being alpha male that now I have to be subservient to him. And we sat down and we had that discussion. It's like, I'm attracted to your confidence, babe. I'm attracted to your power. But the one thing we can never have is you then being, fearful that I'm going to overshadow you. And he turned around and he was like, oh, 100%. He's like, if I have a problem with your power, that's something on his own self-esteem. And we had that conversation so transparently that if it ever started to happen, I would start to be like, hey, do you remember we spoke about this? I'm starting to notice you're actually trying to push me down. Now, we haven't had that discussion, but we've given each other permission to point out if that happens.
So here's another question for you. I was giving a talk with Esther Perel and Dan Savage about relationships, and I've always had a belief, and I still believe it passionately, that for a relationship to work, you have to have best friend chemistry, sexual chemistry, and you have to respect and admire that other person. And they both said, no, you don't need best friend chemistry.
Whoa.
And I thought that was very odd, because I didn't say your husband's got to come to the nail bar with you or come to the hair salon or even go shopping. I never want to go shopping. My husband's got a shopping radar. After an hour, he says, let's go out shopping. And first we have lunch. And he goes, oh, let's go home. And I'm like, where's the shopping? He went, oh, no, I've only got an hour. I said, well, no, we're not having lunch anymore. And now I say, I'm not shopping with you. But I really believe that you must have best friend chemistry. I have wonderful best friends, but he's definitely one of them. And I was surprised that people said, no, your husband shouldn't be your best friend. I think he should at least be one of them. But I want to ask you on these three things: best friend chemistry, sexual chemistry, and deep respect and admiration. Because every couple I know that is phenomenal, and I've studied them for years, all have those three things. Not constantly, there are times when you don't have sexual chemistry. You've got the flu, something's going on, but I think you must have all of those. But I want to ask you, do you have them? And do you believe that they're all equally important?
1,000%. 1,000%. If you don't like hanging out with your partner, you're kind of screwed. Like, and I hear what you're saying as well. I have other friends that fit and feel a certain part of me that my husband doesn't feel. I'm not expecting my husband to feel all parts of my personality. He doesn't like watching The Real Housewives. I freaking love watching The Real Housewives. So I have a bunch of friends where we may, have an alcoholic beverage or, a joint, and we just giggle and watch Housewives. And it's like, but I don't think that makes a difference on my relationship with my husband, or it doesn't demean my relationship with my husband. It's just a different part. But if I was stranded on a desert island, he's the one I pick, period. And if it would worry me, and it's just me, like, I don't necessarily think other people have to do this, but it would worry me if you don't choose your partner.
Yeah. I mean, the same thing. I took my husband to yoga twice. I decided not to take him. We couldn't quite get it. But same thing. If I was in trouble, he is my best friend. When I was ill once upon a time, he was the person, because that's the great thing about when someone's got your back and you've got their back. So I'm very pleased that you see Tom as your best friend. And of course you have sexual chemistry. You also respect him. But here's something else. People think with power couples that we call it in England living over the shop. So you probably know that expression. It really means you live over the shop, you wake up and you go and work in the shop, then you go back to the apartment, and you're never away from each other. And don't you drive yourself crazy because you're always together. My husband and I have the same business. And for us, it's amazing. We're really never apart. We travel together, we work together. Occasionally I open my eyes and he goes, babe, I've got a great idea. I'm like, can I just wake up? Can I just not have to talk about business the minute I open my eyes? But on the whole, I love his enthusiasm. But tell me what it's like for you two, because you live together, you work together, you run a business together. So you're always really, I know you said that when you're together, you switch off with them. But what's it like when you live together and run a business together? Because it is a constant thing. How is that for you, and how do you make that work?
Yeah, we have very strict rules, and we identify our weaknesses and our strengths. So Tom is very bad at noticing if we haven't, let's say, connected or even a date, right? He's just very bad at that. I don't take that personally. It's just his personality. He's not very good at pattern recognition in that way. And so we sat there and he's like, babe, I'm terrible at pattern recognition. Because I'd be like, babe, we haven't had a date in like 2 weeks. And he's like, haven't we? And at first I was like, don't you care? What do you mean? Does that mean that you don't think that like for the last 2 weeks you haven't been wanting to spend time with me? And it just derails on emotion. And so we just sat down and go, okay, what's my strengths? What's his strengths? So my strength is I'm the one who's very good at noticing if we are starting to, drift apart a little. So I'm the one that is responsible for putting date nights in his calendars. I'm the one that's responsible to figure out what we're doing on the date night. And we just agreed. And so because I know him, I don't take that personally. So there's certain things like that. Next thing is, where's that fine line between when you're working and when you're not? Because we both have different habits, right? I like working slightly later. He likes working at 3 a.m. Like he gets up at 3 a.m. That's how early he starts. So we just put rules in place. Okay, when I'm done working, babe, what I'll do is I'll switch a light on. So this is actually one thing I had doing for a while. I had a lamp next to me and he was working from the moment he woke up to the moment he went to bed. Because I suffer from health issues, I had to make sure that I was always being able to switch off and have time for myself. But he would come in still in work mode and I'd be switched off. But because you work from home, you can't tell when someone's working or not working, especially because I had a bad habit as well. I was working in bed, I was working on the sofa, like all of those bad habits. So eventually I was like, all right, I need a signal to tell you I've switched off for the night. And it was a lamp. And so what he would do is he would come in the room with like a work question and he'd see the lamp and he would go like, love you, babe. And then he'd walk back out. And so we just had those pillars in place. We have weekly meetings twice a week, me and him, it's for a very specific amount of time. We have very structured meetings about what that is going to be about. We have it structured so that it's like dressing tests that we're doing in our company, addressing anything, marketing issues. And we have a structure. So it can't become personal. It can't become, I'm sitting with my husband. It's no, I'm sitting with my business partner. And then the final one, which was hard to come to, but once we did, it changed everything. You can't have 2 CEOs in a company. I'm just going to say you can't, because the second you butt heads, who makes the final decision? You're kind of screwed. So we went in saying, babe, we both understand this could hurt our company if we put ourselves as both CEOs. And so we go back to goals. What's our goal? To build a successful business. Okay, what can get in the way of that? Us butting heads and being paralyzed with decisions. So together we said, okay, if we're both CEOs, we agree that's a bad strategy. Yes, we both agree. Okay, so one person has to be CEO. Do we agree on that? Yes, we both agree. One person has to be CEO. And so we're like, who's the better person for the job? Like, not emotional, just who's actually better with the skill sets that are going to be needed for CEO. And we both agreed it was Tom. Like, I have no ego in that.
That's so good that you both agreed, because I can hear women going, oh, you see, you went right back to that. You let him be the boss, but you didn't. You both decided. Yeah.
And the reason why is it's a selfish decision for me. Like, I'm doing it selfishly because I know it's better for the business. Like, forget about your emotions and your ego. What are the skill sets that a CEO needs, and who is better with those skill sets? And my husband's been doing it for longer. I am much more of like, I bring the team together. Like, I'm kind of a bit of more of a nurturer. And I like that. It's not a like, oh my God, you're being stereotypical. It's like, no, I'm better at it. He's not good at that. I am. So we just go, we both have the goal. We want the company to succeed. So what is better? So I was absolutely unemotionally going, oh, babe, of course you should be. And then when we started to sign the papers, it was quite funny because Tom was like, it should be 50-50. And I was like, well, babe, I actually don't think it should be. You do bring more weight to the table. Like, it's not a freaking ego thing. You do. You're willing to work from 3 a.m. until 10 p.m. at night. Because of my health, I'm not willing to do that. So I just look at the real world scenarios and go, there is a world where I don't want to be, the CEO of Impact Theory. I may want to, I do Women of Impact, or I may want to build that into its own entity. And so I just remove emotion. And from removing emotion, we come to these conclusions. And so I was like, well, no, I actually think you should do 51%. And it was quite funny because the lawyer's like, I've never heard couples argue over this type of equality. Usually it's the man says, I want 51%. And the woman's like, okay, like they kind of relinquish. And I'm like, no, it does. Like in a business, I get it. And so, but my husband was very adamant. He's like, there is no freaking way on the universe I'm doing 51% because I need you to know emotionally that we are equal. Even though if we came to a head, someone needs that final say. In this company, you have just as much right as I do. And so we just came to those conclusions. And in going on 4 years with the company, we've disagreed so much twice. And both in those situations, he turned around to me and he said, I've heard you, baby. I'm not convinced. We're going this way. And we've agreed on words to then say. So in response, I say, I disagree, but I commit. And we make sure we say those words out loud.
Because you don't bear a grudge, which is really important. I mean, I'm very lucky because in my business, my husband used to own a whole comedy chain called Jongleurs. He had 22 clubs. And he always said, I know how to manage talent. So he's always seen me as the talent and him as the marketer. Mm-hmm. And we're very lucky because I turn up and teach my method when he couldn't possibly do the content of that. But he's such a genius at marketing. So we're very lucky that. But then he'll say to me, look, you have to let me make all the marketing decisions. And he has to let me make all the content decisions. And actually, we're incredibly lucky because I couldn't do it without him. He couldn't do it without me. So it kind of works. It's that occasionally, of course, there are arguments, but it works itself out. And then rather like you, I have to sort of go to dinner, go, okay, I don't want to talk about work tonight. My husband, he's up at 5, a bit like Tom, and because he like the Energizer Bunny, he can go all night and still be working. And I'm like, no, mm-hmm. I have to have a cutoff time. And sometimes the cutoff time cuts off, but then we need to not talk about work all weekend or all evening. So the other question I used to get a lot when I used to have an advice column for Cosmo and Closer, and people would say, when you run a business, how do you switch the business off and become lovers? Surely if you're around a table talking business, your sex desire goes out the window because you're not lovers anymore. Now, I don't find that to be true at all, but I'd love, if you don't mind, you don't have to tell me anything too revealing, but you can if you want to. How do you keep that sexual passion going when you are working together all day?
Yeah, that's a great question. And this may not work for everybody, but it works for us. We're just so logistically honest and open about things. So it's like, okay, well, typically, are we in the mood from Monday to Friday? Not really, because we're usually exhausted. Okay, but Friday nights is when the weekend starts. So it's just like, okay, if one of us, we're not typically, like sexually driven during the week. And that's just the honest truth. I personally don't know how to switch from being on all day in business with a certain mindset where I have to drive the team forward. I'm talking to Tom not like a wife. I'm calling him out on shit. He's calling me out on shit. So you don't have that chemistry in your body. And so to me, I can't just flip the switch. I can't just go, all right, a second ago I was in business mode and now I'm, this horny being. Like I wish I could. And if anyone out there has a trick, I'm all for it. But I just can't. And instead of fighting it, we've just owned it. And we're like, okay, Friday night for us is when it starts, right? It's like the foreplay, if you will. We have all weekend. We've got time to forget. I switch my phone off now. I've been doing that for about 2 months. On the weekend, you cannot reach me. My phone is off, period. And if there's an emergency, you contact Tom. If you don't have Tom's phone number, then it means you're not close enough to me for it to be an emergency that I have to react in that moment. And so we've made rules like that. So on the weekend, it becomes we play. We play together. We play video games together. We swim together. We giggle together. We watch funny movies together. We watch silly videos together. And for us, that is the foreplay. And so we just allow then, 2.5 days of space to connect again when it's not connected to work. And so again, we've just been very honest and open instead of feeling like, oh my God, should we be having sex on a Tuesday? Like, does this mean something's wrong with our relationship? It's like, no, neither of us have the energy. So why force it? Because once you start forcing it, then it becomes something that maybe you don't look forward to, which neither of us want. You don't want that in a relationship. So we basically spend 2.5, 3 days really freaking connecting, and the other days we don't. Sexually, that is.
You schedule it, which is actually very smart. It's a very smart thing to schedule sex and to have signals like, okay, at the weekend I dress differently.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you for adding that. Yeah.
The dressing is one of my clients said, I always know my husband wants to have sex because he comes out of the bathroom without his pajama bottoms on. Such a turn off. It's like, oh my God, how unsubtle could you be? I don't like that. But you're right, you have to schedule and signal. It's the weekend now, it's the Sunday morning, it's the Saturday. And it's very important to do little things like maybe you light candles, maybe you put on romantic music, maybe you do different things. We clear all the computers out of the bedroom. And I think it's good to do the scheduling. After all animals respond to a signal. They know when the female wants to have sex because she's on heat and it signals, oh, she's ready. And in a long marriage, how long have you been, Tom, been together, is it?
We've been together for almost 20 years. We've been married for 18.
So in 20 years, it's about sending the right signals. And people really believe that it's very hard after 20 years to have a passionate sex life. I can tell you it's not hard at all, but you have to prioritize it. It's not like, oh, we get into bed and maybe we should have sex. It's still about making it a priority, making it important. And the way you make it important is to go, hey, Saturday night is our night, or Sunday morning, or Friday night. And that doesn't take the romance out of it. In fact, it puts the romance in. It says, I think enough of you. I've made this sacred time. And on a Saturday night, it's always the sheets are changed, the candles are lit, everything's out of the bedroom, the computers are gone, and I'm going to come in my high heels or whatever it is, I'm my purple underwear. I'm making an effort for you, but you're also making an effort for me because your phone is off and your head is now switched on to me. And a lot of people say, but that's an effort, isn't it? I'm like, of course, but aren't you worth the effort for both of you? So I'm glad that you think that. And I think a lot of women get very confused about, well, if I have to make an effort, that's not quite the same thing. But what would you say about that?
Yeah, I mean, this is one thing I've actually really struggled with for a long time, because even when I first met Tom, I was like, of course a relationship's effort. Like, why do you look at a business and people go, oh my God, okay, to create a good business, you have to grind, you have to really work hard, you have to put time, effort, energy, sacrifice into it. But we don't look at the same on other things, like with, with our partners or being a parent. Like if I decided I was going to have a kid, I would read every freaking book under the sun about how to be a parent. I would start putting like scheduling in. Okay, now it's going to be time for me and little Tom. Like I would be so conscious about my efforts towards it, because just like a business, nothing happens by accident. So we all think, oh my God, I fell in love with them, right? Oh, it just happened. It was chemistry. Chemistry doesn't last. What is it, like 18 months or something that you have the same spark as you do? 2 years, yeah. Of when you like the cocaine-like experience. And so instead of trying to pretend that doesn't exist, I go, okay, great. Now I understand what's happening to myself. I understand what's happening to my husband's chemistry. I know that for that first 2 years, we were both high on cocaine, in essence, right? Of like our chemistry. It's like the equivalent if you do a brain scan. It's literally the same as being on cocaine. And just like people, when they have alcohol or drugs, it's like you never have that same amount. You always try to have more to get to that same high. And I think that's what happens in relationships. People think that it's just going to happen because initially it did. And then they're like, but I'm not feeling it anymore. I don't know what to do with this. And they start looking for other partners because they're searching for that high because they don't know how to get it how to get it with their partner. And so I just face reality. I understand. I've read a book called The Female Brain. There's a book called The Male Brain. Understand the differences and how we function. And then after 2 years or 3 years or 4 years or 5 years, say, what phase are we in now? And what are the things that we both need to do? Like, I never would have scheduled sex day, in the first 2 years of our relationship, but I understand what is needed in order to have connection with your partner. And 18 years later, that means being very aware, scheduling, putting in hard work and energy. And I even said earlier, my highest priority is my husband. So why wouldn't I put more effort into that relationship than I do in my business?
And something I discovered from having this advice column is that never ever threaten to leave. Even if you want to, people whose relationship, never ever go, I'll leave if you do that. I'm off if you do that. If that happens again, I'm going. There are times when you want to say it, but if you must never, ever, ever threaten to leave a relationship. And if you go into it together and listen, we are together till the end. We're together for the long haul, no matter what goes on, we work it out. If you make that decision and remember, I feel like threatening it, but I'm not going to, because that's the worst thing you can do, threaten it. As a parent, you never say to your kid, if you make a mess in your room, I'm off. But people threaten to leave. And the minute you do that, you chip away at that relationship. And the worst thing is when you don't even mean it and you say it. And I've said that to so many people I'm counseling, don't threaten to leave if you don't mean it. Oh, I didn't mean it. Well, why did you say it then? Because the other person thinks you must mean it. And how would you feel if they kept threatening to leave? And of course, as you say, you really value your marriage above everything, even above your business. And you should, because you could probably get another business. And your business ends one day, but your relationship goes on. And the person you wake up with, go to sleep with, come home to is actually more important than your business. And I love that. But I'd love you also to give some advice to women on how to, what do you think, how can a woman be super confident in business? Because I'm only imagining this, but I've met many women who are the partner of a very successful man who might be the figurehead, only the figurehead, who kind of get slightly ignored. Oh, I just want to speak to the guy. You're the partner, but you're less interesting. Does that ever happen to you? And if it does, how do you cope with that?
Yeah, absolutely. The biggest thing that changed my way of thinking is you can't force somebody to think of you a certain way when you walk into a room. Am I a woman? Yes. I can't change that. So if I walk into a room and somebody looks at me and has a belief system where it's like, oh, she's a woman, she must be, secondary to Tom, let's say, I can't force their opinion. But what I can do is, face the realities. So instead of saying that shouldn't be like that, I just accept it is like that. And so now I don't go on the defense. I come and go, okay, that's what they're like. Now, again, I can't control that. What can I control? I can control how I show up. I can control how I handle myself. So if I walk into that room and someone has an opinion of me, it's not going to change who I am and how I show up. I'm going to be so freaking good, they cannot ignore me. And to expect people to take you seriously when you walk in the room, I don't go in with that expectation. I'm like, I have to prove myself every time that I show up, even on this interview. I have to prove myself. You can't, you gave me such a beautiful intro, which was amazing. But the hope is that in this interview, I'm proving that I am that person. And if I'm not, then judge me on that. If I am, judge me on that. So I'm going to be judged with, you earn a reputation, is how I say it. And so over time, interview after interview, boardroom after boardroom, meeting after meeting, what is the reputation I am building time and time again? And if I go into one meeting and expect everyone to take me seriously because I believe in it, it's never going to work. So I just go, cool, this is the way the world is. I know I have to prove myself. And by golly, I'm going to prove myself. I'm going to be so good. It's a Steve Martin quote that I keep repeating. I am going to be so good. I cannot be ignored. But that's my responsibility. That's not everybody else's responsibility to just assume that. So
define confidence.
No.
I want, for all the women listening to you and looking at you and thinking, gosh, you really have it all. Because I think you have it all. I know you decided not to have a child, but you decided that. No one decided it for you. Define confidence for women. Define it, if you don't mind, because most people just have no idea what that is. How would you define confidence, particularly for female entrepreneurs like yourself?
So there's one thing to give a caveat to. When I was 14, 15, I literally had zero confidence. I had the big frizzy Greek hair. I had the unibrow. I had the braces. I even had, do you remember those big, massive head braces that strapped around your neck?
No, I don't remember those. I remember the train tracks.
Oh, I had the train tracks and I had the head brace that literally went around the neck. So I got teased. I was bullied. I had a very, very long Greek name. So people made fun of that. People made fun of my nose. I had low self-esteem. So it is important for me to state that first. And in those moments, I didn't believe in myself. I didn't believe in who I could be. And it was a process. So where I am today has been a very, very, very long journey. Now, in saying that, I had to look at myself and what are the things I'm not confident in? Because for somebody else, it may be, I'm not confident enough to get up out of bed today. I'm not confident, assuming the corona didn't exist, I'm not confident to walk into that gym. So even though I really want to get healthy, I don't have the guts to step foot because what if people are staring at me, right? So confidence, I think, is very individual. And I think that that's important to assess what are the things that hold you back sitting at the table, right? So that's what I just did. I said, okay, what are all the things holding me back? And so it was sitting at the table because over time I started to realize, hang on a minute, I know a hell of a lot about shipping. I've just spent the last 2 years under a freaking pressure cooker to figure this out. And now I'm in meetings that people are saying things that I actually know aren't right. And so I started to look at those and go, but yeah, I'm not speaking up. Like literally, I'm sitting in these meetings and people are saying something that I completely disagree with based on knowledge I now have, and I'm not speaking up.
So you had to find your voice.
So I had to find my voice.
You found it.
And to thank you. Well, and that took a long time, right? Finding my voice is having the guts to sit at the table. Yeah. That was step one. It wasn't even speak up. Yeah. Whoa, that was the second step. The first step was sit at the table. There's a chair. Like stop waiting to be invited.
Yeah,
and so
I love that you actually didn't wait. So I know you have to go, and I do too, but I want to ask you two more questions that are really important. And the first is, I know you talked about a small change that women can make within 24 hours or even right now, just a small thing that you can do that will empower you and change your life. So I'd love you to share what that is.
So if it's about self-esteem or failure, for me, I really do think of the great people, the people that I look up to, the people I admire. And then I just look at their story. And I mean, Oprah Winfrey is, kind of the no-brainer because she's so freaking successful and you look at where she came from. And it's like, okay, right now I've just failed. I feel really badly about myself. I'm embarrassed, right? Let's just say I'm embarrassed. I'm ashamed. I can't believe I failed at that. I don't want to tell anyone. I don't want anyone to see it. I'm not going to try again because I really don't want to be embarrassed again. And that's where people stop because they're so fearful. And I just go, well, hang on a minute. Look at all the people that I admire and look at their story. Like it's so simple, but it's like, well, of course Oprah failed. Of course Oprah had people that didn't believe in her. Of course Oprah had situations where she had to come face to face of, she's becoming this powerful woman. Who does she date? Everyone was like, are you going to have kids? Are you going to get married? Like, just look at how she handled herself and then go, okay, well, she's no freaking different than everybody else out there. Like, honestly, from the standpoint of she wasn't born into wealth, she wasn't born with confidence, she has haters, she has negativity, she has the negative voice, she has self-esteem issues, which is why her weight's all over the place. Like, doesn't that resonate with every single woman? And it's like, okay, then what is different about Oprah that allowed her to be so incredible, that allowed her to be so successful? It's the fact that she didn't stop. It's the fact that when people didn't believe in her, she kept going. It's the fact that when she fell to her knees, she got back up. And just by reframing, like, that's it. I just go, oh, what would Oprah do? Oh, what would so-and-so do? Yeah, they'd never let this tiny blip of a failure hold them back. So if you really want to do that, if you really want to be there, you have to get back up. And so I kind of just reassess every time I fail and fall. I just go, how badly do you want it? How badly do you want it?
Yeah, I call that the bounce back factor, because success is not about never failing. It's about how fast you get back up. People who are successful fail all the time, but they come back. I mean, Martha Stewart went to jail, but here she is. Robert Downey Jr. went to jail, but here they are. And if you can bounce back like that, and understand that the only person who can judge you is you. And I remember years ago watching Roseanne Barr. I know her stars gone down, but somebody was asking her about, having a baby and giving the baby up. And she was so honest about it. She went, oh, I don't know who the father was. I went to so many orgies, could be anybody. But I knew I'd find her. I knew she'd be like me. And I loved that she could not be shamed. And I think, as a woman, it is very important. Do not allow anyone to shame you. Don't allow anyone to make you feel bad about yourself. Because the thing that vulnerability is the basis of all friendships. We choose people who share our vulnerability. And I find my saddest clients, the ones who pretend to be perfect. Oh, I'm perfect. My life's perfect. And we think, but I can't relate to you. If the basis of all friendship is we pick people who've got the same vulnerabilities as us, then how can you have a friend if you don't show you're vulnerable? And we love people who say, I messed that up. Oh, I made a terrible mistake and that went wrong. And yeah, my first marriage was terrible. I really messed up as a parent. We actually admire them more. And so I love that you're able to say, it's not about falling over. It's about how fast you get back up and how fast you get back on track.
Do you know Vanessa Van Edwards?
Yes.
Okay, so I just interviewed her, and she was saying that, let's say it's either a date or an interview or a discussion of some sort, or even a presentation. Let's say your team's meeting, everyone's meeting for the first time. They have no idea who Lisa Bilyeu is. And throughout this entire interview, it's called The Other Shoe Drop. Everyone's always waiting for the other shoe to drop. Whether it's you're about to hire someone, you're like, okay, I know this person isn't perfect, so what's wrong with them? If you date someone, you're like, well, hang on, they're single, what's wrong with them? So you're always waiting for the other shoe to drop. And there's actually data that proves if the shoe drops in the first 5 minutes or first 10 minutes, you're perceived way more likable than if it drops in the first section. Now, if the shoe doesn't drop until right at the end, you're perceived as not trustworthy.
Yeah, isn't that fascinating?
That's insane. That people literally, and so anytime everyone's worried about the shoe dropping, just remind yourself, oh, phew, thank God that happens soon, because now literally people can relate to you more. And so we all push ourselves and talk about perfection, but really, in what scenario did perfection ever result in greatness? It's the failures. It's the fact, you look at amazing books. The books are written about the failures. They're not always about the triumphs. It's even in my success, I want people to hear the amount of businesses we had started. I started a website domain company. We had a photography company. All of these businesses failed before Quest. So, find the joy in the imperfection.
Yeah, and I must admit, now I tell all my clients this, in my many, many years as a therapist and a writer, without question, the unhappiest clients I ever worked with were those who want to be perfect, try to be perfect. They're not just the unhappiest, they are the loneliest too, because if you appear to be perfect, people can't relate to you. Judy Garland used to say, I come off stage, I go home alone. Rita Hayworth said, every man I meet, they think they go to bed with Gilda. They wake up with me, they're always disappointed. So if you appear to be perfect, you'll always be unhappy because it's a race with no finishing line, and you'll also be very lonely. So I'm very mindful of your time, but I want to ask you just one more question.
Yeah, absolutely.
What are the habits that you think successful women, or indeed successful people, need to adopt? What habits would you say you must take on and hone and develop in order to be successful? What habits have you had to adapt?
Yeah. So there's very practical things. So things like morning routine. I know a lot of people talk about it, but for me, like nutrition, what I eat for breakfast is very important.
What do you eat for breakfast?
So I always make sure that I have very high fat and very high protein. That's based on a lot of health issues that I've had, and I've just assessed what works for me and gives me energy. So really, like, listening to what your body's saying and how you're feeding it, how much sleep. I'm in bed by 9 o'clock. Like, if I hang out with anyone, whether I typically don't hang out with friends during the week because I'm so driven, like work. But if I do, I'm in bed by 9. I eat at 5 p.m. Like, I have very, very strict rules and I don't bend them. And even there are people that try to guilt you. Oh, but just this once. Nope. Won't happen, because I know what works for me. And I know in order to show up for my business, excuse me, in order for me to show up for my husband, in order for me to show up as just a good human being, I understand I have to get sleep. I need great nutrition, and I love to work out. And that's lift weights very specifically. I don't do cardio. I've done both. And I've just assessed that weights really do help build my mental strength. Like, they really do. And this may not work for everybody, and you may say this is a terrible idea, Marisa, but I'm going to say what I do anyway. I talk negatively to myself in the gym, and I love it. I'm like, come on, Lisa, you can lift that weight. Come on, what, are you a wuss? And it's amazing. It freaking works for me. And I don't suggest everybody does it, but I assess what works for me. So lifting weights gives me mental strength, so that if I feel mentally weak during a meeting, it's just like I've practiced, right? I've built that muscle. It's like, all right, you can get through this, Lisa. You can get through the hard talks. You can get through the hard conversations. So those are kind of very practical things I do. And I really do believe perspective is everything.
So what you're saying for the audience is that you prioritize yourself. I must eat well. I must be in bed at 9 and I have to work out. And you put that in your calendar. If someone said, hey, Lisa, can I meet you at 6? You go, so that's my workout time. Can we go out to dinner at 10? Absolutely not. I mean, when I go to places like Ibiza, so we're going out to dinner at 11 o'clock at night, I'm like, no. I remember when I first went there, it was, we go to bed at 7, have an hour's sleep, go to bed at 8, go out to dinner. I go to bed at 7, wake up at 8 and think, oh no, I can't be bothered now. And I just don't do that. I'm the same. I eat early. I like to have dinner at 6, occasionally 7. I would never go out to dinner at 9 o'clock at night. People say to me, let's go out for pizza, or let's go out for cake. I don't eat cake. I don't eat pizza. I don't even like it. And so when I go out, I'm very clear which kind of restaurants. I'm not going to an Italian restaurant where they just serve pasta. I'm not going to places like that because it doesn't work for me. And people think it's being selfish, but you see, here's a little, let me use this pen. Here's selfless, and here's selfish. And right in the middle, it's called honoring yourself. You can be selfish, I'm doing what I want. You can be selfless, I'm just going to do what you want. Whatever you want, I'll do it. Or you can be honor yourself and say, no, that just doesn't work for me. I'm the same. I don't schedule meetings around certain times. And I think it's really important. And I really admire the fact that you've got that, you know what works for you, and you factor it into, here's a habit. I worked out my needs, and I'm going to put them first because it makes me a better businesswoman, a better wife, a better me. Like working out. And I used to do that. I used to put yoga classes into my diary and said, never book me a client in that yoga time. Even with my daughter, when she was a baby, I go, darling, this is mummy's time. And you can come and do yoga with me, but this is my time. And it's good for your kids to see that. So I'm really grateful you showed up. I love all.
Can I just add actually one more thing to that? Because this is quite important, so I'm doing all that so that I can show up for other people, so that I can show, right? It's become a bit cliche now, but put the oxygen mask on yourself, for yourself before you put it somebody else. And for me, it was so important because what happened 4 years ago, I had massive health issues. I'm still struggling. I'm much better now, but I had big gut issues. The gut issues meant I couldn't eat much. And in not being able to eat much, my hair was falling out and my nails were very brittle. I couldn't stand up for longer than 5 minutes at a time. And I didn't tell anyone because I was embarrassed and ashamed. Just to kind of give context. So we're at Quest, we're building it. It's like massive. I've got 40 people under me, a big team. And I literally cannot stand up for 5 minutes. I don't tell anyone. What started happening was I got very emotional. And I was going into meetings. I was like, really frustrated and pissed off when I shouldn't have been. I escalated emotionally in meetings when I definitely should have been. I took things personally for the first time. When Tom was giving me criticism, I was taking it personally. I was like, why is my husband being so mean to me? And all of that was because I started to realize it was my nutrition, right? It was all the things that I wasn't doing that I couldn't do, but it was having an effect. So going back to like, if you're a woman in business, the biggest thing for me was controlling my emotions. Like just on an over, like the biggest thing I could have done that helped me in business, control my emotions. The second my nutrition went out the window because I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep, my emotions were all over the place. And that made me a terrible business person. So that was kind of why like I wanted to emphasize the health part, because it wasn't just I wasn't feeling great. It affected everything.
Yeah, I'm the same. If I eat badly, it takes me 3 days to come back from it. I go into a mind fog.
Yeah.
I feel tired. And you really have to have to say, no. I was on a boat on a cruise last year and the food was so bad. I said, I'm going to get off and fly back to LA because I just can't eat this terrible, terrible food. And I would have actually flown back, but I managed to get off at a port and buy all the stuff that I like protein bars and nuts and avocados and so on, because your health is your wealth, and if you haven't got health, you haven't got anything. And again, it's that honoring myself. I know that everyone's eating cake, and you've made me cake, and I was in Cuba with my husband. It was our wedding anniversary. We went to this restaurant. It was one of those, and they said, we've made you something called 5 milk cake. I don't even eat milk. And it was made of milk, cream cheese, evaporated milk, and some other kind of milk. And it was like, oh my God, this is like, how can I eat that? And they were so proud of it. And I said, okay, I want everyone to come out of the kitchen and I want to give them all cake. And I was giving them all this cake and trying so they wouldn't notice. And I said, can I take what's left back home with me? As they gave me more cake. And when I left, I found this family in the street. And I said, would you like some cake? And I gave it all to them. And I just had to act like I was eating the cake. Yeah. And of course, my husband doesn't drink, and they're bringing out champagne. You had to act like we were drinking the champagne. But you have to be able to say, even if you've made this and gone to great effort to make me cake or chocolate, a vegan wouldn't go, oh, you've made me a roast pork, I better eat it. They kind of find a way to say no. A Muslim would never go, well, it's lobster, I couldn't possibly turn it down, any more than a Hindu would go, oh, it's, rare Wagyu beef, I better eat it. I love the fact that you and I both agree that you have to be able to say no. Until you can say no, yes has no meaning at all. And then when you eat stuff you don't want to eat for someone else, you pay the price. So I love your advice. Put your health first. Find out what works for you and have the confidence to say that works for me. So thank you so much. You're amazing. And I mean, you just look so radiant and healthy. And I hope the audience are really learning from you, because you can do what Lisa's done, factor it in, decide what's important, and then go for it with absolute confidence. So I could talk to you forever. And when I come back,
ditto, girl.
Well, when I'm back, we'll hang out. So thank you. I love you and Tom, and it's been great to talk to you. And where can our audience find you? How can they find out more about you?
Yeah, so if they love podcasts, they can go to Women of Impact on the podcast, where I interview you on, amazing interview. And then, or YouTube, Women of Impact, where we have the video versions. I also am doing these new tips. So tips on confidence, tips on controlling your emotions, things like that I think have really fundamentally changed my life. And so I've been doing those. So if you love video, go over to YouTube. But if you're an Instagram fan, go over to Lisa Bilyeu.
If you enjoyed that video, check out the next one. right here. You can also click the link below right here for your free gift. We've kind of forgotten how to hold ourselves. So I'm going to show you how to have the body language of someone who appears to be incredibly confident.